Welcome back, everyone. Why most ancient buildings are fake by our good friends Toldinstone. Let's see what that means. And I think what it means is they are recreated and or refurbished. But let's actually see.
Years ago, when I was a college student studying in Rome, I visited the Abbey of Monte Cassino. I remember being impressed by my first sight of the building, poised on a steep hill against an amphitheater of snow-dusted mountains. I walked across the echoing
That is beautiful. All that gilded gold.
cloister and entered the Abbey church, which shone with Baroque splendor. As I stood by the altar, looking up at the gilded ceiling, I had to remind myself that it was all fake. In February of 1944,
Allied bombing. I think.
assuming, wrongly, that German troops were stationed inside, the Allies dropped thousands of tons of high explosives on Monte Cassino, completely destroying the abbey. After the war, it was rebuilt so comprehensively that a visitor who didn't know otherwise would assume that the abbey had remained unchanged for centuries. When I returned to Rome, I began to notice
Beautiful place.
how many of the city's iconic ancient buildings were also reconstructed. The Temple of Vesta in the Roman Forum, for example, was destroyed during the Renaissance when workmen stripped its marble for reuse in St. Peter's Basilica. The structure we see today was built in 1930 with the few surviving fragments. The Curia, the meeting place of the Roman Senate, was rebuilt around the same time. It had served as a church for 13 centuries, and during that time, part of the back wall, the upper halves of both side walls, and large chunks of the facade had been lost. Less than 50% of the building we see today is actually ancient. Even less of the Arch of Titus is original. When the monument was incorporated into a castle during the Middle Ages, the outer parts of both piers were cut away, a tower was built on top, and a ramp was cut through the foundations. The structure was so badly damaged that it had to be dismantled and painstakingly reassembled in 1822, with travertine replacing its missing marble blocks. Even the Colosseum has been substantially rebuilt. During the 1830s, Pope Gregory XVI remade a large part of the missing south side in brick. The only section of seating inside the amphitheater dates to a 1930s reconstruction effort, and huge parts of the hypogeum have been demolished and reconstructed. Perhaps the most remarkable restored monument in Rome is the Areopagus. Shattered by earthquakes and buried in waterlogged soil under the fragile foundations of a Renaissance palazzo, this magnificent Augustan altar seemed impossible to excavate. But in 1937, in a colossal feat of engineering that involved raising the overhanging palazzo on concrete pilings and freezing the mud beneath, archaeologists dug down to the altar, recovered its decorative elements, which had shattered into hundreds of fragments, and reassembled them on a modern superstructure. The Italian government did not invest millions in this project out of some abstract appreciation for antiquity. The Areopagus was reconstructed to serve as the centerpiece of a fascist exposition that celebrated the 2000th anniversary of Augustus's birth and hinted, none too subtly, that Mussolini was the new Augustus.
Oh, God.
Ancient buildings have often been restored or rebuilt in the service of a political agenda. Among the earliest examples are the restorations of the Theater of Pompey, Colosseum, and other buildings in Rome by Theodoric in the 6th century to demonstrate his allegiance to the Roman elite and Roman tradition. During the Middle Ages, the citizens of Verona reconstructed parts of their Roman arena as a symbol of civic pride. In 1533, Francis I of France ordered the medieval neighborhood inside the Roman amphitheater of Nîmes to be cleared so that one of the most imposing antiquities in his kingdom would be returned to its original glory. Henry IV of France, likewise, ordered the clearing of the amphitheater at Arles and commanded a Roman obelisk found nearby to be erected in its arena. His contemporary, Pope Sixtus V, raised and moved a whole series of Roman obelisks, making them focal points of new avenues that connected Rome's pilgrimage churches. This was just the beginning. We'll discuss the golden age of historical reconstruction after a brief word about this video's sponsor. The late and down which 9th centuries. Turning to our topic. During the late 19th and early 20th centuries, the new science of archaeology combined with the rising spirit of nationalism to drive the reconstruction of many ruins. One example is the Saalburg, a Roman fort near Bad Homburg, Germany, that was reconstructed at the turn of the 20th century under the auspices of Kaiser Wilhelm II. The Roman baths in Bath, England, excavated and rebuilt between 1878 and 1883, are a product of the same era. In their case, however, the factor behind restoration was not nationalism, but tourism.
Of course.
Gamble that paid off, as the hundreds of thousands who still visit the baths every year attest. With the advent of mass tourism in the second half of the 20th century, enhancing visitor experience became the single most important factor in the reconstruction of ancient buildings and sites. A well-known early example is the Palace of
This is somewhere in Greece. I know that.
Minos at Knossos, restored by its excavator, Sir Arthur Evans. Evans worked at Knossos from 1900 to 1931, uncovering the most impressive center of what he dubbed the Minoan civilization. As more and more of the vast Bronze Age palace came to light, it became clear that the newly excavated ruins needed to be consolidated and protected. Evans' solution, controversially, was to rebuild much of the palace in reinforced concrete. Equally controversially, the restored interiors were painted with frescoes invented on the basis of a few scattered fragments.
Well, I know we're only 7 minutes in, but I want to kind of create a conclusion already. It feels like it's not controversial, I would say, that they're doing this. I think this is bringing the past to life, because without these restorations and these recreations, what would we, as a collective people, really be able to visualize? How would we be able to visualize besides drawings and books? This is the only way to actually experience a possibility. Like, you go to the movies not real, right? We like, for example, there's a movie like that comes out like Gladiator, right? Russell Crowe, great movie, right? Joaquin Phoenix. It's not a real movie. Like, they didn't, like, that's not a 2,000-year-old movie for sure. It's a recreation, but it gives us an idea to see through the past. Now, this is archaeological, and there's ostracized like things here. Like, does the end user, like, that's paying for the tourism, that's paying to go see this, do they actually know that they're not seeing the legitimized real thing? The answer to that is probably they don't. They probably do believe that this is real. Like, they probably believe that every inch of the Colosseum is created 2,000 years ago. However, I think if you look at the net positive and the net negative, it's a good thing that they are restored, because it's not trying to conceal a lie. It's trying to reinforce history. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to rebuild. Things break. Earthquakes, conquests, using the same material to rebuild other stuff, erosion. There's just tons of ways that buildings just fall apart. But what do? Do you leave them in rubble, or do you recreate what it was once showing? I think the latter. Let's keep watching though.
Some sites have been even more extensively reconstructed. For modern visitors to Athens, the most prominent building in the Agora is the Stoa of Attalus. Built in the 2nd century BC, this long, 2-story portico was destroyed by barbarian raiders in late antiquity. Little more than the back wall and foundations survived to be excavated. Between 1953 and 1956, however, the American School of Classical Studies at Athens, with generous financial assistance from John D. Rockefeller, Jr., reconstructed the Stoa as the Agora Museum. The replica is as accurate as the archaeologists could make it. Careful measurements were made of the existing ruins, and every available fragment was incorporated into the structure. Quarries were even opened in the hills around Athens to ensure that the new stone would match the old. Only the design of the interior was modified to accommodate the museum exhibits. Besides its contribution to the experience of an important archaeological site and tourist attraction, the reconstructed Stoa of Attalus was a clear symbol of American and Western commitment at a time when Greece stood on the front lines of the Cold War. It was also an expression of an older tradition, both Western and Greek nationalist, that privileged classical antiquity over all other periods. The project's American donors saw the new Stoa as a monument to democracy, ancient and modern. Many Greek archaeologists, however, were inclined to interpret it as American colonialism.
No, that's not fair. That's not fair to say. I think what I was saying so many times before is restoring history. The fact that you can attach, it's a stretch to attach Western democracy with democracy of ancient time. It's very different.
The controversies of restoration are equally potent on the Athenian Acropolis. Over the past 2 centuries, every structure on the Acropolis has been at least partially rebuilt, initially in the service of Greek nationalism, and later to enhance the experience of a site visited by millions of tourists. The little temple of Athena Nike has been completely dismantled and reconstructed 3 times. The Odeon of Herodes Atticus was comprehensively rebuilt in the 1950s. The Parthenon has been under reconstruction more or less continuously for more than a half-century. All of this work was undertaken with the aim of restoring the Acropolis to its ancient glory. In the process, everything later than the Roman period, along with virtually every trace of soil, was stripped away, leaving those serially restored buildings and monuments isolated amid naked rock. The Acropolis we see today, many archaeologists have complained, never existed. It is not restored. It has been invented. This is the heart of the controversy over the reconstruction of ancient buildings. Beyond the practical details, how much of the structure to reconstitute, the materials to use, etc., the restorers have to make decisions about the purposes of their project. Is it meant to help visitors understand a place or time? Is it meant to be beautiful? Is it meant to suggest connections between the past and the present? Who's past and who's present?
Good video. Is that it? Yeah, good video. What book is this? St. Emperor's Interesting. Is this guy, by the way? Is this, if you guys know, you know. If you don't know, you know. But yeah, I think my thesis continues. Like, what do? Like, do you strip history to make way for? Well, I think the only argument that's really sufficient on part of like the negative would be specifically isolating one period over another, as if like the ancient antiquity of Greece versus when it was Roman and or Eastern Roman and or many times after that. Like Greece has obviously been occupied, or Athens specifically has been occupied by so many different factions all the way up to modern Greece. So what do you do? What do you select? You got to have all of them, but you got to have all the cultures and histories kind of like together, but you have to tell the story in a way that is characterizing the most prominent at the top, and then you kind of go through the motions down. I disagree with the fact of like erasing history, in terms of like removing anything Roman or Byzantine or other stuff, but at the same time, it's a hard conversation to have because you're limited resources and limited everything, especially in a field that doesn't get a lot of funding comparatively to like other things like military. But you got to see the forest for the trees here and see that the overall process of restoring and recreating history is altruistic in sense of trying to save a bit of the past for the future. So we can learn, because if everything just rubbled out, became rubble, we just had a bunch of pile of rocks, and all we could do is look at movies and media to see what they actually look like. That would be a sad world to live in, right? Imagine if you, one of the greatest. Let's just say something like the Acropolis with the Parthenon and everything that's on top of the Acropolis. What if we just let that rubbleize? That's not even a word. Bunch of rocks. I mean, some people might stick to their guns and say that's good to let it run its course, but to me, I think it's great to reconstruct and rebuild. A lot of times things have fallen apart. Even in ancient times, things have fallen apart. Earthquakes, they rebuilt it. Is that bad? What is the threshold of time where you can rebuild without having something looked down on? I don't know. Anyway, thank you guys so much for listening to me ramble. We got many videos to come. Make sure to hit that subscribe button. I appreciate every single one of you. You have a great day. Yes, you have a great day. I'll catch you next time. Peace out.